The cement had dried when he moved it. The loss of the second ship was hard to take. The fly made its way along the wall. Do that with a wooden stick. Live wires should be kept covered. The large house had hot water taps. It is hard to erase blue or red ink. Write at once, or you may forget it. The doorknob was made of bright, clean brass. The wreck occurred by the bank on Main Street. Welcome to another episode of the Passing Through podcast. This week's guest needs no introduction. It is the lovely Robert Falconer. This is his second time passing through, and it is always a joy to speak to him. He just came out with a new book. The book is called If You're Going Through Hell, Keep Going. And it's a beautiful book of quotes and anecdotes and stories on various themes: life, death, meaning, spirituality, farts, anything, you name it. And we talk about a variety of those things. And I always love speaking with Bob Falconer. His contributions to IFS, to reducing human suffering, to all of the work he does for healing, spiritual, psychological, otherwise. It's always great to speak with him. And for me, I always actually get a little bit nervous speaking to Bob. And I feel like some kind of teenager with a crush on someone, like fangirling out on Bob. So you'll hear me stutter, stammer, get my tongue twisted, fall all over myself, and lose my sense of conversational coordination. That's okay. I'm trying to accept these parts of myself and give them love and not shame them and not exile them. So this is a practice in just accepting myself as I am. Sometimes I am awkward in conversation, especially around someone who I admire. And so you'll get some peeks at me being human. I don't want this intro to go on longer than it needs to. I just want to jump right into it. But first, I wanted to give you a quick eco tip. So for this week's eco tip, I recommend that you inspect the pipes in your home or your apartment. They estimate that around 14% of household water is wasted by leaks. So your toilet might be leaking. I don't know if you've been to those houses or those bars or cafes where you go in and you just hear a little stream flowing from the tank of the toilet into the bowl because the lever is loose. Fix that if that's happening, because water is just being wasted. You might have a small leak under your sink, as Asha and I did inside Wilma. In our case, this was very serious because it could create mold and rot the wood inside the van, so we had to promptly address this leak. But in your home, this can be invisible. You may not even know you have a leak. So check under your pipes, look for any signs of mineral deposits or indication. Maybe the wood is warped, indicating that water is slowly leaking. So check your bathrooms, check your kitchens, check your garage, check anywhere where you have a water supply. Maybe even where the hose is. You might have a leaky hose outside. So that's what you can do to help the environment. So without further delay, let's jump right into it. Be good to one another, and I will talk to you next time. Actually, before we jump right into it, I wanted to note that this interview consists of many quotes, and there were so many that I tried to narrow it down to 10, and I couldn't really. So we only speak about a handful, but there are ones that we didn't speak about that I would like to share just because I think that they are worth sharing. And so I'm going to leave you with two before we jump in, just for you to ruminate on over the next few days or seconds. I'll play a little music or something to fade us in so that you have a little contemplative ambient music going on. So here's the first one by Albert Einstein. The most beautiful and deepest experience we humans can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion, as well as all serious endeavors in art and science. The next one is by Rumi. Everything you see has its roots in the unseen world. The forms may change, yet the essence remains the same. Every wonderful sight will vanish. Every sweet word will fade. Do not be disheartened. The source they came from is eternal, growing, branching out and giving new life and new joy. Why do you weep? The source is within you, and this whole world springs up from it. Okay, Bob, welcome back to the Passing Through podcast. I'm happy to have you again for a second time. It's a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. It's good to be here.
So, I've been reading your new book, kind of like on and off over the past many weeks. And it's really great because there are a series of short quotes that you've collected over the course of your life and some anecdotes and stories. And I would love for you to give a little bit of an introduction for the inspiration of the book so people who aren't familiar might have a sense of what this book is and how it can be used.
Okay. Yeah, it is quotations that I've accumulated over my 50-year career as a therapist and in healing myself. And there are also a bunch of stories or little anecdotes or parables that I find myself telling clients over and over and over again because I think they're very, very powerful. And personally, these quotes help me a lot. There's sort of a very convenient way, like a coat hook. I can hang a whole coat, a whole bunch of different thoughts on like just one quote. Like the quote, "What's in the way is the way," which actually goes all the way back to the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic Roman emperor. Um, when I'm feeling a little frustrated with a client, that quote will pop into my head. And I'll go, "Oh, turn towards what's frustrating you. That is the way. That's your doorway. It's not a problem. It's the way." So it's very most of these quotes are like that. They're things that are resonated in me and I find repeatedly helpful when they sort of pop into my mind.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I mean, reading them for me, there's something about quotes that it's like poetry. They access this liminal space, and there's so much packed into a simple sentence that when I read it,
Mm-hmm.
I can just close the book and think for I don't know how many minutes or sometimes days some of these will be recurring in my head.
Mhm.
And it's really powerful to have these things as just something to flip through and use for inspiration or even guidance if there's something that I'm struggling with. Sometimes I'll read this and something just jumps right out of the page to me, and it's been kind of invaluable for, like, I don't know what it is. There's some kind of practice, I think it's called self inquiry, is where you use like pages from a book, or is that what that is, or am I making that up?
Well, that many people in the Catholic Church, they called it Lectio Divina, which is divine reading. Then you typically would be a passage of scripture, and you would read it. They have structured where you'd read it 3 or 4 times and different, yeah, many people use written word as a doorway in. And in our secular age, most people won't go for sacred texts. But quotes with a sense of humor they can often tolerate. And that's my hope. I don't want people to read this book. Hopefully, they'll, open it at random and find a quote or two that actually resonates with them, and then put the book down and let that quote sort of cook inside you.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a joke from another author that I really like. Um, People should buy one copy of this book for each bathroom in their house.
That's amazing. I've already bought two, actually. I have one for myself, and I left one at an eco village that I was staying at last month because they had this amazing library of spiritual teachers and uh, books by Bill Plotkin. I don't know if you're familiar with him,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of other people. And I felt like, you know what, I think this book has a home here.
Mm. Well, thank you for that.
And I guess I wanted to start just by starting to read a few. I tried to narrow it down to a bunch that I think we could fit here, but I thought the format could be fun to just read some of the ones that stood out to me and hear what they mean to you and how you came across these quotes,
Hmm.
and just have little conversations, little vignettes about these things.
Great.
So the first one that I have here is, every moment has two blessings, the one it gives you and the one you can give to it. And it's a Lakota Sioux saying. And that one stands out to me because it has some kind of mysterious quality. Because when I hear it, I say, yeah, there's the blessing that's given to me, but the one that I can give to it is somehow more mysterious. So maybe you could speak about this quote and these two things.
Yeah. I think it's mysterious because we're trained not to think of ourselves as spiritual beings. We're trained not to think of ourselves as agents of spirit on the surface of the earth. And that quote very much suggests, oh, you can, each moment you can be an agent of spirit on the surface of the earth and offer blessings all around you.
Hmm. Yeah.
I just spent a week in Montana on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, um, teaching their addictions treatment team, IFS. And, you know, one of the reasons they like me on the reservations is because I'm open to working with spirits. Whereas in mainstream American culture, that's a big problem, and most people go, "Oh, Bob's gone round the bend." But working with the tribes, they think, "Oh, this guy's not as stupid as most white people." So that is very interesting and refreshing for me to have that kind of experience, and they're much more aware that spirit comes to the planet through people,
You know,
and we can offer blessings.
yeah, yeah. I I have one question about this before. I'm like juggling different spinning plates now. I want to stick to the quote, but you've stirred something in me, so I have to remember to come back to it. But this blessing aspect of giving blessing and being an agent of spirit, I, it- for people who hear this and they go, "Yeah, that sounds cool," but how could I actually give blessing? Like, how could I manifest that? Do you have any tips or
How
recommendations
could
or?
I ever do that? Me? Me, stinky old me, have blessings come through me?
Exactly.
That's my response. There's a great short poem by W.B. Yeats called Vacillation, and he talks about sitting in this coffee shop in London. He says, "My 50th birthday had come and gone, and the empty cup was on the marble tabletop." And he says, "For some reason, for 20 minutes more or less, I was blessed and could bless." And he doesn't explain how or why, but I think people have that experience. And W.B. Yeats did, and he expressed it, in a beautiful, simple way.
Mm,
There are times blessings move through us. And I think, when you really love somebody and you just put your hand like on their shoulder or something, you can feel it then. And yeah, for most of us these days, it's quite rare, sadly.
yeah. Yeah, the it's true. There's a certain there are certain thematic things that move through this book. Certain quotes, or even they recur sometimes. So so it's interesting. And this concept for me was one that I was observing. This thread of giving love and the challenges associated with it. Giving love not just to others but to ourselves. And there's a quote and a few coming up about shame. And this is something that's very alive in me. And I wonder how to love more, because it feels like it's in us, and it's yearning to, like you said, move through us. But there are certain barriers and impediments, and it gets stuck. It's like a tangled bush of thorns and things that are just catching it as it tries to move through us.
Yeah, and in our culture, we're often shamed for offering love. I want to say, I think the way to open to being able to do that more is to not to strain at that and grab at it and stuff like that, but to look with patience and compassion for all the parts of you who are not ready to do that, and welcome them and love them and get them comfortable, so that I think when all the parts of us who are blocking this step back and are made comfortable, then it just flows effortlessly. It's who we are, really.
Hmm.
There is the overall guiding theme behind this book is that healing doesn't happen without connection to spirit. Doesn't seem to matter what flavor it is, what religion, what however people do that. But if they can't connect to some sense of spirit, deep meaning, something bigger than themselves, they don't heal. And the 12 steps know this. You got to find a higher power, something bigger than you are.
Yes. Yeah, that's been my experience so far. I mean, I guess I'm on a kind of journey of awakening, or trying to be, as I'm doing this thing, moving to eco villages and living in a van and being in nature. And I find that the moments that I feel this kind of blessing that you're talking about, and this love and this ease, it's usually when I'm in nature, and I just surrender to what's around me, and the sound of a bird song in a tree, the feeling of the breeze rustling the leaves, something like this. And suddenly everything is just open and present. And yeah, that sense of something larger than myself, that like, if maybe it's an
So
animist.
important. Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump into this next one here, which is another one that I really like. If you want something you have never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done, by Thomas Jefferson. And I love that quote. To me, it so eloquently and succinctly describes the cost of admission for change or for growth. Because many
Yeah.
of us, myself included, we don't want to put in the time to get the results. So we want something.
Yeah. And it's scary to do this.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm wondering what that quote what that quote means to you.
There are a lot of other quotes in there with very much the same thing. One that really resonates for me is that the captain who would discover new lands must be willing to lose sight of shore.
Hmm.
Who wants to lose sight of shore? I mean, that's scary. I mean, to hell with that. I'll just go home and have a beer.
Yes. Yeah, that's safety. I think we have a compulsive need for safety, and that sense of detaching, of being out, untethered, losing sight of shore, it deprives us of our sense of safety, and this is unsettling for a lot of us.
Well, I think it's a false sense of safety. It's an illusion of safety when we have that kind of clinging and closing down in the name of safety. It doesn't work. It actually makes us more vulnerable. It's sort of like the ostrich. You know, if you're an ostrich these days, somebody's going to come along and kick you in the butt. It's just inviting a nice big kick. So it's fake safety, but it's so tempting. So many of us live our whole lives that way until we're on our deathbed wondering what the hell happened.
Hmm.
There's another quote I like that a lot of people hate. This is one of my all-time favorites. It's from a female Cherokee shaman. Our foundations are ripped out from under us over and over and over again until the abyss itself becomes our foundation.
Hmm.
That's our real safety.
Yeah, some of these quotes, there's so much weight and power in them that they just there's what can you say in response to them? Like that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
hopefully you can just let it resonate within you and think about the foundations you've built, and will you be able to move off of them, or does spirit have to come along and destroy them and drag you kicking and screaming?
Yeah, I
Unfortunately, most of the time I have to be dragged kicking and screaming.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say
I'm
as
getting
well.
better though.
There's another one I have here about shame that I alluded to earlier, and it says the shame-bound person's goal is to go from birth to the grave without ever being seen by anyone. And this one didn't actually have it's not attributed to anyone. Some of these aren't, and that's actually a question I had for you. Are some of them you, or are these just ones that
Some of them are me, but a lot of them I just lost the attribution. I'm a compulsive journaler. You know, I'm a writer, 8 books, and but I journal compulsively, and I've been doing it for 40 something years. My journals are, I'm just starting volume 205. Each one is 100 full-size pages. So that's 20,400 pages of journal.
wow.
And I've recorded these quotes in all those journals. And that's where they come from. 30, 40 years of keeping records of all the what I thought were the most helpful and powerful things I read.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've lost a lot of sources.
Okay.
Some of them are probably me, but a lot of them I just lost the source.
Okay. Yeah, because my partner and I, when we were reading through it, we were wondering, is this Bob or who is this? Who are these ones that have no annotation? Because it's kind of cool to think that you're just weaving in these little things in between all this other stuff. But now I like that there's this mysterious quality that maybe it's you, maybe it isn't. But this one about shame and not being not wanting to be seen, it resonates with me a lot personally because I hate having like a room full of people looking at me. You know, public speaking, being in front of a room and everyone's watching, listening to everything I say, it's horrifying. It gives me a sense of horror. And like, what is it about the shamed parts of ourselves that want to retreat and hide, and how do we make it safe enough for them to come out and be healed? Because I feel like so many of us need that, and so many of us know this feeling, and we have these shame parts, but we don't know, we aren't taught how to make it safe to heal it.
Many people fear public speaking more than they fear dying. It terrifies people, I think, exactly for the reasons you're saying. I also think shame for most people is the most difficult emotion to tolerate. It's the most corrosive, painful. They will do anything to avoid it. So they find some part of themselves who carries all the shame for the whole system, and then they encapsulate it and bury it in a subterranean basement prison somewhere so that they don't have to feel the shame, which works a little bit, but the problem is then the shame's immortal. So I think the way to work with this is you find those parts and you offer them love and connection. And for a lot of people, there are all sorts of other parts in there are going to go, we're not welcoming that part. We don't want anything. So there's a whole bunch of other parts who have to get on board. And then when you can, unblend from it so you're not feeling the shame and develop a relationship with the shame holding part. I think that's the basis for long term healing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those things that's easy to understand on an intellectual level, but very hard to do in practice.
Right, right. Simple but difficult.
Yeah. Um, there's another one that I really like here that I just read it and I felt like, yes, it was something about this that just seems so true. Also, not attributed to anyone. Whatever emotion you cannot feel runs your life.
That's me, I think.
Okay.
But of course, all my best ideas were stolen by the ancients. But I think that's original with me.
Do you want to speak about it a little bit? Like, because to me, I have some ideas about it, but I wonder what it meant to you when you wrote it.
Well, for a long time, I didn't feel fear consciously. And I kept looking, where's my fear? You know, well, I know it's got to be here somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And then as I started realizing more and getting more aware, I realized, oh, my whole life was being run by these hidden fears. And I restricted what I did out of these hidden fears. And, oh my God. And then I noticed that in a lot of my clients. And it just seemed to ring true. There's another statement that comes from a famous anthropologist who was studying demons, possession, and cursing in Africa. And he said, the hidden demons are always the most powerful.
Hmm.
It's the ones who are in secret. I think it's true in our psyche too. What's in secret and hidden from us has the most power to control our behaviors.
And is there a distinction there between like the Jung's idea of the shadow self and then a separate concept of like a blind spot? Because I guess those things could be separate, right? Sometimes they're woven together, but
Yeah, yeah. I think they're separate but often occur together.
yeah, and if you were gonna, because I think when I think about some of these quotes, I think, yeah, this could be helpful to people. And I think if someone reads this quote and thinks about it, they say, yeah, sure, I have these aspects of myself that I'm blind to, my shadow sides, my hidden demons. Great, I know it. How can I see them? What can I do to to actually become more aware? And do you have any advice for people who might have this question?
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and I think it's a lifelong quest. I don't. We don't have the snap answer here. And again, the basic thing is find the parts of you who don't want to see this stuff, who are blocking it out, and welcome them in a loving, gentle way until they're more comfortable and secure and no longer need to block it out. Do not try and bulldoze them or blow them up with dynamite or push past them. They're doing this for what they think is a really, really good reason to protect you, and we should respect their effort.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. That's something that I
It
can
doesn't
chew
look
on.
like the answer you wanted to hear.
I mean, I think as you were speaking, that I realized in your first part of the response was that yeah, of course, there's no easy answer for this. Why am I even asking you for an easy answer? I almost felt foolish for a second. Um,
No,
but
no,
but
good
then
question.
what you said is true. It's and it takes practice. It's a lifelong effort, as you said, and um,
Hmm.
it's a slow process. I think I just broke my foot 3 weeks ago when I was walking in the forest. It was a curveball from the universe to kind of, I think, slow me down on this journey. And I was thinking, like, what is the purpose of this? Why did this happen now of all times? And like, it's been really slow healing, and it's given me time to contemplate things, and it's given me time to develop some cabin fever and be a little stir crazy. And read through your book, which is great. So I've had a lot of time to just go through and contemplate things. But yeah, it's the process has been slow and difficult, and I think there's a parallel there between this process that we're just talking about as well. So
Hmm.
some things take time.
Hmm. There's another quote that I really love that sort of fits here. That's the real moments of enlightenment are not aha moments; they're oh no moments.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, yeah, and oh, that's so good. Actually, I'm gonna have to find that one in the book. Because yeah, that's something that's alive in me right now, because that's what I felt happened. It was the immediate thought is, oh no, why now? But then I thought maybe this was the lesson that I'm supposed to learn right now, is how to deal with adversity, hardship, challenge, and that's what's being taught. So
Hmm.
yeah, oh no. What else do we have here?
You'll never be a popular guru if you start telling people that kind of stuff.
There's one here that I really like, and I've heard it before, and it's such a good quote. I use it often actually. It's by Mark Twain, and he says, "But who prays for Satan? Who in 18 centuries has had the common humanity to pray for the one sinner that needed it most?" And I love that quote so much because it gets to the heart of an interesting contradiction. Um, Maybe not in like Jesus's teachings, but perhaps in modern Christianity, we could say, where if Satan represents the shadow or the capability of evil, we're kind of not caution, encouraged to exile this part and deny it love and dignity. And it seems backwards because the teachings of Jesus were to like give love, forgiveness, and all of these things. And
Mhm.
so, like, if we really believe that everyone deserves love and respect and has dignity, then we have to be willing to admit that that applies to sinners as well as saints. And yeah, this I love this quote so much.
Yeah. And Jesus went to all the outcasts. He went to the whores and the tax collectors. The tax collectors were considered some of the worst. Publicans in the Bible, that means tax collector. So he went to them. He went to the rejected and the despised.
Do you think? And I just had this thought now while we're talking about this, that perhaps one of the reasons, I'm sure there are many, but one of the reasons why it's so difficult for us to give love to this shamed part is that because there are these commands, these commandments from certain socializing structures like the church, like religion, that encourage us, almost even compel us to condemn and to deny and to cast away and to exile. And so we, as a reflection, we do this inside of ourselves to those parts of ourselves that we deem satanic or whatever. Do you think
Hmm.
that there could be some overlap there, or?
Yeah, power structures, domination structures are all in favor of this kind of stuff. That's their power base. So they want us hooked into that. So we're fed that with our mother's milk. Churches, schools, public education, governments, Anything like that is always pushing this kind of garbage.
Hmm. Yeah, and the insidious thing about it is often it's kind of invisible. It's just something that you
Yeah.
inherit.
Everybody does it. It's hard to even question it sometimes.
Hmm.
It's, part of the air. And look what they did to Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
Yeah. So another one I have here is, and how are you feeling about just going through these? Do you want to take more time on them, or do you, is
That's
it
fine. I'm doing fine. I'll squawk if I don't like it.
okay? Okay. So this one I also really liked. It was the first time I read it. I'm not even sure who Jay Foster is, but the quote is beautiful. And it says, "You will lose everything, but right now we stand on sacred and holy ground. For that which will be lost has not yet been lost. Impermanence has already rendered everything and every one around you so deeply holy and significant and worthy of your heartbreaking gratitude. Loss has already transfigured your life into an altar." And oh my God, like such a powerful, beautiful quote. Can you talk about that
Yeah,
one?
yeah. Impermanence, impermanence and death are what make the present moment so incredibly, exquisitely, heartbreakingly valuable. It won't come back. It's here once. That's it, and it's going. Rilke said, "We're given two great gifts in life, love and death, and mostly we pass them along unopened." I
Mm,
think this is the gift of death. It makes us aware of the incredible, poignant, exquisite value of each moment. And I think this points to that in a very, very beautiful way.
yeah. And how do you speak about easy questions? How do you feel about death? What what thoughts are alive in you on the topic of death?
Well, I'm 76, so it's getting closer and closer. Hello! There's another quote I like a lot, and this one's in the book, I'm pretty sure. "When death finds you, I hope she finds you alive."
Yes, that was one that I was gonna. That's on my list as well. Yeah, I love that one. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I don't think we die. I think we just drop this fleshy suit of clothes. I think there's overwhelming evidence of that now for anybody with an open mind. An interesting sidelight here is most of the people who call themselves skeptics these days are rabid fundamentalists. And they will ignore all the data that's right in front of them because they're so dead set on this, that there's nothing going on here. It's all material. But the data is overwhelming to anyone who opens their eyes. I wish those people would be more skeptical about their own skepticism. That,
Mm,
that, that would be nice. But it's probably not going to happen. Fundamentalists don't often change very easily.
yeah.
So I think it's a change of clothes. Um, there's so much I want to do. My life feels so exciting and full. And I've got all these other writing projects I'm working on, and I'm teaching a lot. I do in my less than healthy moments, I start feeling rushed because there's so much I want to do before this body crumbles. And at my age, there's a lot of stuff I used to do all the time I can't do anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about as well in light of this foot injury. Like walking is something that I used to be able to do and can't right now. And I was thinking about this as old age approaches. It's kind of a series of doors closing of things that you used to be able to do that you can't. And then I was wondering, but surely other doors must open as these other ones close.
Yeah.
And has that been your
Yeah.
experience?
Oh, definitely. I'm more filled with joy now than I've ever been
Hmm.
by a long shot. So, yeah, I think so.
And yeah, I guess that raises another question of like there's this concept of aging well and growing and maturing, and some people do it and some people don't. And I guess if you've aged well, as you age, you transition into a space that you're describing, where things seem better, you're more joyous, you're more calm, you're more at ease. Do you have any tips and tricks, any secrets? Uh,
Well, I think it's not one you're going to like. It's simple but really difficult. I think every time we're faced with a loss or trauma, it's a fork in the road. We can either allow our heart to be broken open, become a bigger, tender, more exquisitely alive being, very hard, and we do that by the process of grieving our loss. We have, I think that's what grief is. Grief is a form of alchemy that transmutes that suffering into compassion. So that's one fork in the road. The other fork in the road, which is a lot easier, is just getting bitter, hard, contracted, hate filled, and going out and getting drunk and beating somebody up, or watching internet porn for 6 hours, or taking your credit card, maxing out all your credit cards for stuff you don't need. Every time we're faced with a loss, there's that fork in the road. And I think the quote aging well is a summation of all those choices
hmm,
over years and decades.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think grieving is a real key to it. Grief is a work. It accomplishes something. It does something very important inside of people. It's not something to be medicated away, which I think is one of the really poisonous attitudes of modern quote mental health.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and I wonder for people listening again, like a lot of these questions are not just for myself, but for people listening, because I think everyone has this human um, yearning to kind of move away from pain and towards comfort and ease. And when we are confronted with grief, we kind of recoil from it because there's this perception that, oh, it's going to be painful, oh, it's going to be hard, it's going to hurt so much. I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit and cry in my room for days and just, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it. But
Yeah,
the truth is, if you do it,
it will be painful, Danny. It will be painful, but the alternative is worse.
yes.
I'm just saying the most cheerful things today.
No, no, it's great. I think a lot of times the things aren't cheerful, but they're true, and yeah, that resonates with me. Um, so so yeah, I'm just gonna try to, because we're getting close to time, so I'm gonna try to finish these last couple ones I have in here. There's one I don't have that I wanted to because I loved it. I was laughing when I was reading it, but I didn't write it down, and I just thought of it. Maybe you remember it. It's this story about a Japanese. I don't know if he was a meditator, but it's about flatulence. It's about farts.
Oh yeah, I could tell that story.
Yeah,
I know that
it's
story.
great.
Well, one thing I found is sometimes when I would pray, I would start to think, "Oh, I'm a holy man. Look at me. I'm some kind of sacred guy." And very often, what would happen is the higher power would make me fart loudly, not just a polite little toot, you know. It's really hard to feel like a holy man big shot when you're farting. It really worked, you know. It got me off of that, and in a way that just cracked me up. You know, I found it hilarious. And then I started wishing that ministers all over America would have that same issue, and that it would improve church services. But that's a side note. And then I started getting proud about, hey, I'm the first man ever to have flatulence as a spiritual channel of communication. It's amazing the things we can get proud of. And then I read this story about this Japanese monk over 1,000 years ago and he wrote this beautiful long poem about the winds of karma. And he took it to the and he was so he felt, oh, this is the winds of karma have the winds of spirit have blown away all my karma. I'm free now. A beautiful long poem. He took it to his abbot, and expecting to be praised, and came back the next day, and the abbot handed it back to him with just one word on the top of his poem. And he rushed outside and he looked at it, and the word was farts. And the monk thought about this overnight and got more and more angry. How could you do this to my great poem? And then the next day he went back into the abbot all mad and says, how could you do this? How could you do this? And the abbot smiles and said, oh, the winds of spirit have blown away all your karma. But one little breeze from me and you're upset.
Oh, it's so good. It's such a funny story. I love it's one of my favorites, favorite anecdotes in the whole book.
Yeah. I think spirit has a sense of humor.
Yes.
And it's one of our great losses in the West that we get all lugubrious and solemn, and spirit has a sense of humor. It's also very, very high energy often. All the earliest spirituality was around dance and ecstasy and high energy and very, very high arousal states. Not this like comatose, semi dead, sitting still on an uncomfortable pew. We've lost that entire half of the spiritual universe in the modern West. And that's really, really a tragedy.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I so much agree. And that actually goes into a quote that I think relates to this really well by Thomas Paine. And he said, "He who dares not offend cannot be honest." And I think that
Yeah,
this speaks to that.
yeah. Yeah. Winston Churchill said something like, people hate you. This is good. It means you've stood up for something at least once in your life.
Yeah, but this is something that is very alive in me because I often wrestle with wanting to be authentic, wanting to be humorous, wanting to be like push a boundary a little bit, make someone a little bit uncomfortable, and then I don't because maybe I've been conditioned by society that it's wrong, that you shouldn't make people uncomfortable. But this kind of trickster energy, this playful, humorous spirit thing that just comes through me, it feels like almost like farts, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
it's just there and you hold it in. It's like holding in a fart. It doesn't feel good. And
No, it's not healthy either.
yeah. So how do we like release that aspect, that more humorous, playful, trickstery energy without, hurting people, without mm, rubbing someone the wrong way? Maybe it's not even possible.
I don't think it is. I think you have to be willing to have some people resent you and have people dislike you. Not everybody in the room is going to like you. No matter who you are, doesn't matter. And I parts of me, young parts of me, found that very difficult to realize that no matter who or what I am or did, there are people in the room who just won't like me.
Mm.
Oh well. Now I'm a lot easier about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still something I struggle with. I haven't gotten to the point where I say, "Oh well." I still care. I still want to connect with people. I want them to feel good. I want to be in service to them. I want to help them. And if I feel that there's no connection there, it feels like in music, an unresolved note. It's like there's a dissonance.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I want all that too. But there's something from the Al Anon tradition I really like, and that's don't go on their side of the street and try and clean that up. Stay on your side of the street. Clean up your side of the street. You can't clean up theirs, and they won't like you trying to do it. So, or mind your own business, then you won't be minding mine. So if I just try and keep my side clear, I think when we get in trouble with jokes like that, or the way I've gotten in trouble with jokes like that, is when there's some hidden cruelty in them.
Mm.
And if I'm really, really clean about that and work with all the parts of me that, are snarky and sarcastic. I work really hard not to express sarcasm. You know, the word sarcasm has an interesting derivation. It comes from Greek words which mean tear flesh.
Hmm.
It's really, so I try not to be sarcastic at all anymore
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's crossing that line to me.
Hmm. I've tried to weed it out myself as well. I'm born in New York, and I have that part. Uh, New Yorkers are very
I'm
sarcastic.
a New Yorker too. Yeah,
Ah,
comes with the territory.
yeah. So it's very hard to suppress that, but I've worked toward suppressing it because I found that people don't know what to do with sarcasm often.
Well, it hurts them, creates distance,
Hmm.
hurts
Um,
us too when we do it to other people.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we have time for um, maybe one more, and then I want to give you time to just um, promote anything that's going on with you right now. So let me just pick a final one here, and I think that this one is one that really there's it's so hard to choose. There's so many that I haven't even. There's like a dozen that I didn't even put in the list that are still visible to me. But this one I really liked because I think it gets at the heart of what a lot of us are after. And maybe I shouldn't speak for a lot of us, but for me personally, ultimately, like I'm thinking like, what is the meaning of things? What is the purpose? What is the point? Am I here to learn? Am I here to be in service? Am I here to heal myself, to heal others, to heal the earth? Why am I here? And I think a lot of people wrestle with this. And so this quote by Viktor Frankl really, I think, is beautifully kind of inverts the problem. And he says, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is being asked.
Yeah. I love Viktor Frankl, or loved him. He's long dead. I think the major lesson that people need to get from Viktor Frankl is that meaning is not some frosting on the cake after everything else is taken care of. He said very, very clearly, he survived Auschwitz longer than almost anybody else, 4 years, I think, in the camps. He said, they could tell who would die. It was whoever lost a way to make a meaning out of their existence, they'd die in a day or two. So the ability to connect with some sense of meaning, it's survival. It determines who lives and who dies. It's not some little thing you put on nice clothes and go in Sunday and find. No, it's the very basis of your access to life energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trained, basically our modern materialist world says, oh, the world's meaningless. It's all biology and accidents. And after you die, there's nothing. And it's totally destructive of meaning, which is what we most need to survive and have joy filled lives. And I think everybody has to discover it for themselves. It's not the same. It's not even the same moment to moment. Asking what's the meaning of life is about like asking what's the best chess move. Well, come on, yeah, it depends on where you are in the game and all sorts of other stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing all of that about Viktor Frankl and meaning. And yeah, I also think that it is not the icing on the cake. It is very much at the heart of what it's about. But yeah, to just give you the floor and have some closing stuff about maybe things that we didn't get to talk about or things that are coming up for you. I just want to make sure you have that time before we head out.
Okay. I I've got a lot of stuff coming up, but one that I'm especially interested in because it's so important to me now. I'm going to do a 1 day class for IFSCA. That's Internal Family Systems Counseling Association of Canada. IFSCA.ca is their website. and it's going to be on spirituality and healing. I don't think people heal profoundly without some connection to spirit, some connection to something bigger than they are. And that's actually a very unpopular idea in modern psychotherapy. We got all these pompous ass polysyllabic diagnoses. That's all bullshit. I shouldn't talk like this, but I'm old. I don't care anymore. That's just crap, you know. The DSM is garbage, written by competing political factions. I mean, it's appalling. A state of healthcare is appalling. Mental health care, really, really poor. I think it's about connecting to spirit and finding some way to do that that doesn't contradict the the really hard-won gains of science. I don't think they're contradictory. I think they fit together really, really well. So I think we have to make that respectable again, to have spirituality as part of healing and therapy. And for most therapy schools, it's not respectable. You're not supposed to talk about that. You're supposed to talk about, treatment-resistant depression and bipolar disorder and schizoaffective and all this. So that's one thing I'm doing. I got a book that'll be out probably early next year, late this year, on Emanuel Swedenborg and IFS.
Ah, yes.
Emanuel Swedenborg, a very fascinating guy, died about 1780. He was the foremost scientist of his day, and when he was about 50, he started having visions. And he spent the last years of his long life writing descriptions of heaven and hell. And they're now available in 30 volumes in Latin. 30, 30 volumes in Latin. Very detailed guy. And it's absolutely fascinating what he found. And a lot of it fits very well with IFS and other modern parts work therapy maps, which I find astounding. And he actually knew about the hemispheric functions in the brain way 250 years before anybody else. So he's a fairly amazing guy who I find fascinating. So those are a couple of the things I'm doing.
Awesome. And people can find out about the IFS spirituality work that you're doing in Canada on your website?
I think so.
Okay.
robertfalconer.us, or you can go to ifsca.ca.
Okay. And I'll put that in the show
There's
notes.
lots of other stuff I forgot to mention on my website. Tons of, thank God I have an IT person who does that for me, because I can't do that stuff. So,
Okay, cool.
okay, I got to run, Danny.
All right. Thanks,
Any
Bob.
last word?
No last words. If you have 1 minute, usually I just do the minute of silence where we just give some love and kindness out to the universe. If you have 1 minute, we could do that and be gone.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, starting now. Okay, Bob. Thanks for
Okay,
passing through,
blessings, Danny.
and nice talking to you as
Bye bye.
always. Bye.